YouTube land, the people that are in church might interrupt me and ask me questions, and I'm going to respond to that because that's the format we're moving in. Are any of you bored with Philippians yet? Have you in some way, the past 2-3 weeks we've been moving in this, have you in some way read something new? Thought something different? Sparked thinking? Is there anything else? Okay. Do you feel differently about Paul? Have you grown to like Paul, dislike Paul? Something happens when we read a guy's letters, but more intimately and more with understanding, we start to see a person. Now, I don't know who of you used the notes and looked through the notes and started to see the progression. Okay, but there is a progression, and we'll talk through it. And I'm not hasty. It's more important for me, for us to understand why the book was written and why we have the book. Because, do you know John? What does John say? First verse. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And in verse 13 we get, and the Word became flesh. 14. And after verse 14 we get that whole thing, and the flesh dwelled among us, lived among us, tabernacled among us. So then my question is, what's he doing? What's Philippians tabernacling among us, living among us, dwelling among us, and what should we pick up? And sometimes you can get instructions, but you execute them differently. Okay? If you get to the same endpoint, it's same because you have a different understanding of certain things and you'll just execute differently. Like, who here, you're good with instructions. You get like a thing to put together and you open the instructions. Oh no, not me. I'm that guy with the spare parts at the end thinking they could have done this better. So instructions are really important because instructions have the ability to meet you where you are at the level you are. So sometimes I just look through a thing, or I look at the schematics, the blown up schematics of this thing. I look at it and then I'm, okay, let's run with this. Because I've done it enough times that I have all this baggage, this knowledge, this understanding, this muscle that has been exercised, that I'm able to. But the next time when I build that same thing, I will do it more efficiently and I will have less spare parts. I'm always like, why is there one extra screw? One extra screw. It's like, or a washer. And I rack my mind about where does this washer belong and is it important for safety's sake? And if you read the manual, something would have happened in you. You understood, okay, I read the manual and I saw this index of parts. And in this index of parts, it said it should have 4 washers and I have 5. Okay, they put in 1 extra. There's no me wondering later, where's this 1 extra washer supposed to be? And that's the value of a manual. Even if you have the ability to do life, rereading it just makes you sure of life. Sure of what you know what to do. And now we are in Philippians, and Philippians is, you want me to sum up Philippians again? Okay. Philippians is 4 chapters. It's written by a guy called Paul. He's an apostle. He's in jail. And depends on what school of thought you are in. He's either in Ephesus or in Rome. It's irrelevant. And when he's in jail there, he writes a letter to a church that's financially supporting him. But he starts his letter and he says, that's the prayer, chapter 1, verse 1 to 11, that's the whole prayer part, where he says, every time I think of you, I remember your love. And that's like, okay, so that's the introduction. That's who he's speaking to. Like, I'm not writing to the bank when they gave me a loan. Every time I think of you, I think about your love. Yeah, every time I think about you, the interest just grows, and the interest I mean as a pun. It just grows. He's writing to them not as a bank, but as people he loves. And he says, do you know what I want you to grab a hold of? All of you, when I say Philippians, probably the most imprinted verse in Philippians will be Philippians 4, verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, because as children we were taught this. But we did not understand the power. We were just taught the words, because it's actually extremely powerful. And we have this rejoicing theme that goes out. And he says joy 5 times, if I remember in that word count, 5 times. And rejoice he says a few times as well, because he's actually teaching them how to survive. Okay, so I'm in prison. Do you know how you survive prison? You're not a prisoner. And he shifts his prisoner of, he says, do you read, I'm a prisoner of the Roman government? He says, I'm a prisoner of Christ. That's a revealing of what he wants to tell. Because are they in an easy situation? So we spoke about Philippi and the difficulty of living in Philippi, and not Philippi in Cape Town, but Philippi in Greece. And it's like a really difficult place to live, because you have all these very Roman people that have this, what do you call it, patriotism for folk and fatherland. They will kill everyone who doesn't do it according to their will. And they're all old warriors. So it's not like they will speak eloquently to you. Do you know what happened to Paul in Acts? Did they speak eloquently to him? You must say this when you must do this when you say eloquently. Did they speak eloquently to him? They grabbed them and beat them. So how do you think it will go for the rest of the Christians? So being a Christian, you know what was interesting? They had all these gods, and you had like the god of this and the goddess of that and the demigod of this, and it's like ministers and prime ministers and, you know, MECs. They had all these things in their culture. And if something bad happened, you know what they say to themselves? It's because my neighbors didn't pay homage to my gods. And you know, all of a sudden, you're a Christian and you no longer pay homage to this specific God, and you have this earthquake. Who did they kill? Look at history. They killed the Christians. So being a Christian was difficult. It had high stakes. So now you're in this place, and he's telling them this difficult thing. Paul is in jail, and being in jail, he tells them, rejoice. And not only rejoice, among yourselves have humility, and among other people have humility. So when someone accuses you, what do? You do the Jesus thing. You turn your cheek. Because you're, once again, remember that was what the sermon was about last time, in the turning the cheek thing. It's not standing back, it's opposing differently. Because what does he say? You're not from this kingdom. So it's actually beautiful. He's saying you might be Philippians, but you're not Philippians. You're Christians. So even though you are in Philippi, you're still Christian. And you should react like a Christian. So he's pitching up this thing. They are really patriotic. You're supposed to be patriotic. Actually nice. He's opposing the two things. This is their patriotism, this is your patriotism. And then we have to ask the question, how does this apply to us, Paul? Where are we allowing our culture to be the driving force of our thinking and our acting? You know that. Who's ever been to a braai or any discussion where it turns into a sad story about as soon as you start to light the fire? And it's about this government, this, the water here, the sun here. it's because we're part of a system we're not supposed to be part of. Then we are lending out our ears. And who, when you walk away from that, if you've not been the one chatting with, you feel dirty, you feel oily, because you've been tainted with a world system and a world thinking you're not supposed to be part of. And you know what Paul says in Philippians? He says, do you know how you can resist, become a prisoner? Speak out. Because he has spoken out, he is a prisoner, because that's what he says. Because I've spoken about the gospel, I'm now a prisoner of Christ. And he's saying, do you know what's good? You know what's good? People around me all of a sudden are encouraged to speak Christ. And that's how you start a cultural revolution, by not being afraid to be beaten. Do you know who was a recent historical figure that will teach you that? Gandhi. They did these non-violent protests but were treated violently until the whole world saw it and said this is not right. But the first people had to pay the price. And if we want to see change, and Luban, you said you have this passion for the youth, and we all saw this youth line coming through that we want the youth, then who's going to be first to be beaten? Because Paul says it's worth it. Remember when we get to chapter 2, the end, chapter 3, where he starts to do that accounting. I was this, I was this, I was this, a Pharisee among Pharisees, a Jew among Jews, I was a Benjamite, a Benjamite, I was a this, I was a that. And he says, I counted all as a loss. I'm not able to put this on my accounting sheet and say this is a positive. I'm not able to do that. But to know him in his death and his resurrection. So Philippians is one of those books that really, as soon as you start to read it, it starts to ask questions in my mind. That's normally what happens. It asks a lot of good questions. So you just had a discussion with someone. Were you a prisoner of their system or your system? Because you can stand at the braai, at the watering fountain, at the wherever, and you can be a prisoner of their system because they're speaking and you're listening to it. And you're taking all the negativity, and you can be a prisoner of that, or you can be a prisoner of Jesus Christ. Either way, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult, but you have a choice. I gave the youth a book. I don't know whom of you read it. Viktor Frankl, The Meaning of Life. It was what's life about? And Viktor Frankl was this brilliant Jew in the concentration camps. And thank you very much. In the concentration camps, I was concentrating on the word. In the concentration camps, and he had like this different thinking. He was in the concentration camp, but he understood they can break me, or I can choose to be broken, and he chose not to be broken. And he came out, and he was like the guy that took out the golden teeth out of the people they just gassed. It's like, that's a bad job, huh? Imagine that. And he's like, I'm not going to let this situation break me. And we allow situations to control us instead of us saying, this situation is not going to break me. Okay, so think in your minds, what situation did you have this week that pushed you to certain thinking that was not your own? You were a prisoner. Was it a financial one? Was it a frustration one? Was it a not seeing an outcome? Things moving too slowly? Health? Anything like that? Where were you a prisoner? Because that's the reality. He had to take the Egypt out of the Israelites, even though the Israelites were out of Egypt. And so nothing changes. This is like the New Testament Egypt. It needs to be taken out of you. if you are submitting to a certain thinking, if you are humbling yourself to a certain thinking, if you are allowing to be taken captive, like Paul was never a captive. I think he was frustrated, but he was never a captive of the Roman government. He was just frustrated by the system not moving fast enough, because he had a one-track mind. He's going to Caesar. Someone needs to tell this guy about Jesus. It's not everything, and that's the agenda thing again. Paul gave up his agenda. Because what was Paul's first agenda? Let's kill all these Christians that are blaspheming the name of God. And Jesus comes to him and Jesus says, Paul, that agenda you are currently on is directly against me, God. And Paul gets this light bulb moment. And then he's struck blind, and his blindness goes away, and he sees the light again. And it's all these really good metaphorical words we have. And I'm asking myself, where am I a prisoner? And you should ask yourself, where are you a prisoner? Because we know all these things. We've been Bibled and churched till it comes out of our ears. We know all the verses. We know, I call them fighting verses. As soon as something is difficult, you rip out your fighting verses. I'm the head and not the tail. You know all these verses. We have the fighting verses, but we don't have the fighting thinking. And the verses will stay the verses until you have the mindset. Have this mind among yourselves. We will read this in Philippians. Have this mind, because he says, he's actually telling them to change their mindset. You have this Philippian mindset, and you think me being in jail is bad. I'm telling you, you're in jail as well. I just choose the jail I'm dying in. And to live is Christ. To die is gain. You see, he just chose his jail. And it's actually nice if you start to think about Philippians in that way. So that's the first 11 verses, you get that prayer. Then he starts to tell about he's in jail and it's difficult. Will he live tomorrow? Will he die? I don't know. And it's not a depressed, I don't care. It's like both ways are good. You know what that is? That's an eternal optimist. That's an eternal optimist. This situation, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's going to work out for the kingdom. It's going to work out for my benefit. And do you know what my benefit is? My benefit's not me living and having a nice bank balance. My benefit is His kingdom come, His will be done on heaven and on earth. But He writes it to people who have the nice bank balance. And He's telling them, thank you for using your nice bank balance for the kingdom. Because it's not ours, it's the kingdom's. So He's not pro-money or anti-money, because in the end He says, I've had a lot and I know how it feels. I've had a little and I know how it feels. None of that's important. He's trying to create a mind in us, the mind of Christ. Why do I say that once again? Because what's in that poem, that chapter 2, verse 5 to 11, what's in that poem? And Christ, having everything, being rich, gave up everything. And if you read it further and you end it in that end, and when He gave up everything, even death on a cross, God gave it back. And He exalted Him before all mankind. And all mankind now bows down because He gave up everything. This is this real upside down movement where we should say, okay, so what's important? Me having everything? Like I thought, this is a good one. So, is it important me having everything? That's the question we ask Paul, and Paul would say, it's more important to have Christ, and not the nice parts of Christ, all of the parts of Christ. I like where Paul has this thinking where our suffering adds on to the sacrifice Christ has already given. It's like giving us the chance to join with Christ, to build up with Christ. And that's actually an important thing. So you get that chapter 1, you go to chapter 2, and he starts with humility. Have this mind among yourselves, the humility. Then he gives this thing about Christ. And then he goes over to 3 examples. Did you read the 3 examples? That's chapter 2, verse 19. Yes, I'm too close. 19, where he tells about Timothy. And he says the most beautiful things about Timothy. He says, Timothy, my son. And you know, in the family business, who's going to look after you? The son, not the employee. He knows because there's a relationship. And what relationship is there? My father did the business with this guy. And it was a good relationship, and I'm going to honor and keep this relationship. And you have this thing where he writes about Timothy, where he hopes to send Timothy soon. He's cheered of your news. He talks about Timothy's proven worth. That's the second time, and he'll speak about it 3 or 4 more times, where he talks about the worth of things, a manner of life. Have you read the word righteousness in this book? Paul writes the word righteousness, and he likes the word righteousness. There's a New Testament scholar called N.T. Wright, Tom Wright, and he translates righteousness in a better way. He calls it a right way of living. Because this is a lot what Paul is writing about, the right way to live. And after that, he talks about Epaphroditus. Do you know Epaphroditus? Lovely guy, comes from Philippi. He was sent by the Philippians with this money gift. And when he came there, he met Paul in jail, and then he got sick. And Paul writes this beautiful thing. I'm so glad he lived and he didn't die, because him dying would just add more sorrow unto me. You know what we call honest words? Honest words. You know that exact same guy, when someone fell out of a window after being so bored by his sermon, praise God, so bored by his sermon, that guy, he prayed for him and he was raised out of death. Like, that's Paul. Paul, a snake bites him, he just shakes it off. Shake it off, you know that Taylor Swift song, Shake It Off? That was written about that verse. And he just shakes it off. And then he prays for like this chief after the shipwreck, and that guy he's healed. And you have this guy Epaphroditus, and he's worried about him. It's like the same guy that can raise people out of death is worried about a cold. Because he's an honest person. He's like, I'm not in control of anything here. I know what authority I have, what power I have, but I still know it's not about my agenda. Because as soon as you start with this healing ministry thing and you get frustrated because why is he not healing certain people? You know what the answer is? I don't know. I just can tell you, if we stop praying, more people won't be healed. That's all I can tell you. We don't know the agenda, and it's not our agenda. And Paul's just this really honest guy that says, if this guy died, I would have been sad, really, really sad, because I like you guys. And it's not him being, sometimes you call this the Stockholm Syndrome, where you like to ingratiate or just empathize with your situation or the people in your situation that are making it difficult. And it's not like Paul has Stockholm Syndrome about being in jail or being positive. It's not like this, I'm so positive. He's eaten all his vegetables and vitamins, and he's just like, those people that irritate me. Sorry if you're like this extremely positive guy permanently, because that's a lot for me. It's not like he's that. He's like, I could be this sorrowful guy constantly, but I'm not going to allow that to be the choice I make. Even though I'm in jail, I'm not the sorrowful guy. But sometimes things hit real in life, and I'm not going to be fake when someone dies when I love them. It's going to be, okay, this is honestly a difficult situation. I'm giving myself 5 minutes. And often in Christianity, we tell ourselves this lie as well. You should be fake. Oh no, it's going to be better, brother. That's a lie. It's not going to be. It's going to be worse. You're going to be in the fire, but luckily I read this story in the Old Testament about when you're in the fire, He's with you in the fire. And then it's the most amazing thing. And their clothes did not smell of fire. Because there's no grief after He's been with you. But He will be with you in the grief. But as soon as you get out of that situation, don't allow yourself to be still in the grief. And this is these beautiful things Paul just calls out in this letter to them. And he gives them 3 examples. So he says, have this mind about yourself, be humble, be thankful in everything, rejoice always, let your reasonableness be known to other people. This whole concept is telling them. And he gives the example of Christ, and Christ is like over here. A really difficult one to match because He's Christ. And then he brings us 3 people examples. He gives us Timothy, he gives us Epaphroditus, then he gives himself as an example. And then as soon as you get to that part, you're on you see, we're nearly at the end of the book. You get to that example of Paul, and the themes you'll get once again is hardship, humility, hope beyond suffering. You know, in a book that's all about rejoicing, rejoice always. And again, I say rejoice just so if you've forgotten, rejoice. There's a lot of hardship. Who did not have a difficult situation in the last week? That's the reality of life. But Paul says, where are you imprisoned? You choose that. Did you see Braveheart? Who can remember Braveheart? What demographic am I hitting? Okay. In Braveheart, they have all these crazy Scottish people. And this one war moment, they like lift up their skirts, but you know, with that Scottish kilts, they have no underwear. And they can take our lives, but they cannot take our hearts. They can kill our bodies, but they cannot kill our hearts. Is the concept they yell and think. And that's a very poor concept. They can take your life, but they can't take your heart. We often, you know, in our house we have this saying, we call it, I'd like to think. I'd like to think in this situation I'd react like this. You know, it's one of those, I'd like to think, because you've never been in that situation, so how can you say you'll definitely react like that? So we're honest with each other. I'd like to think. Paul is in this moment where he says, I don't want you to be I'd like to think. Because where's the conviction in I'd like to think? I definitely know. It's like if there is a lion and it zips up this thing over here and it comes in here, I'd like to think I'd charge the lion. Okay. It would be an easy meal for him, but it would give you time. I'd like to think that. But if it was only my wife and children here, it's no longer I'd like to think. I'd give him all the heartburn he ever had in his life. But I'll give him heartburn. And Paul's like this, I want you to know who Jesus is. So it's no longer I'd like to think. You'll react in this situation. And Paul's giving an example of Timothy and Epaphroditus, then he's giving an example of himself. And in this example of himself, he's giving is a no longer I'd like to think. It's a I definitely know. Never mind the situation. Christ is more important. I'd rather know Him in the death and the resurrection and in the suffering than know Him in the fluffy things, because He's worth it. And then he goes on to that part, verse 12 in chapter 3, where he says, not that I'm this super apostle, this amazing guy. I'm able to do it. That's that conviction. Then we go on to that Philippians 2, verse 4, verse 2 to 9. Now he's finished with the examples. The example of Christ, Timothy, Epaphroditus, Paul. Now he's on to the choking part. You know what the choking part is? He's not giving you a choice. He's telling you, stop it. You're disagreeing with each other. You know what that is? We call that pride. It's because you're putting yourself before other people. So that's all the verses he just gave to us. And that's a difficult part, because he just said he's worth dying, and he gave all these examples of people that are willing to die. Now he's giving a normal human example. Who's had a disagreement with someone recently? Okay, so most of us, this is a blanketing statement, we've had a disagreement. How did you handle it? Like a Philippian? Or like a Christian? And you know, Christian means little Christ-like ones. Those that are like Christ. And he gives this example, and that's of all the counseling I've ever read in the Bible, this is my favorite way to do counseling. When two people struggle, you just say, stop it. Stop it. That's Paul's counseling 101. Just stop being Philippians and start being Christians. Stop it. You're selfish. You have an agenda. You've brought your agenda into the situation. You know your agenda is not the most important one. And if you're still fighting, I'd like to tell you something nice. Your agenda is more important than Jesus' agenda in your life. And that's the honest truth. Let's be honest with each other. There's no humility, because we still like to live. We still like to have the last say. And if you've been married, I've been married for how many years now? 15, 14, 15, about there-ish. I'm not supposed to know, but the accounting wife's supposed to know. And we spoke about it the other day. You know, you can have this situation where I hate to be late. It's not nice. I don't like being late. Courtney has different priorities than I have. Do you know how eloquently I put that? She has different priorities than I have. Does this cause friction? Definitely. A lot of friction. It causes friction. Okay, so it causes friction. If I say to Courtney, you are making us late, and this isn't acceptable. Why did you not do your hair faster, or feed the children, bathe them, put clothes on them, did their hair, or anything else faster? Why did you? Do you hear all the attacking words? That's attacking language. It's honest, but you know what would be a better thing to do? How would that be the responsible thing, how to handle that situation? Is in the time that you are currently late the best time to speak about it? No. No. That's not the best time. You get a time when life is more quiet. And you say, do you know, the other day we were late. And normally I react. I explode. I did not explode. You know why I did not explode? Because I understand something. When I am late, it makes me feel like I was not responsible. And when I come into a place and people see me coming in late, I feel all eyes are on me. I still handled the situation. But there was no attack in it anymore. It was a vulnerability, no honesty. Okay, so we speak about a you problem and a me problem. Lateness is a us problem, but the reacting is a me problem. And that's what Paul is talking about. Stop it. Stop reacting. Your reaction's not helping. What does a attack, you make us late, you are always this, what does that do? That creates a what? A conflict and a separation. Rather than saying, okay, I've evaluated this situation we're in. And when this happened, it makes me feel like the following. I'm going to be honest and vulnerable to you because that's humility. It's not you make us late. I feel when we are late. And that's if you want to do any counseling, that's my counseling. Stop it. Because that's basically the Paul method. It's not the best situation to talk about this. It's you evaluating, okay, why am I getting on my high horse? Why am I running around? So that's the nice part. Paul's saying that this is a beautiful verse. It says, it's verse 8. I can zoom it in for myself, but not for you. In verse 8 of chapter 4, I think it's chapter 4, yes. It starts, finally, my brothers, and we'd like to teach that to the children. You know, children are wild. Sometimes I think, where did they get all this? It's not like they're watching TV and all these evil thoughts are we're going to rip this frog's arms off and put in a stick here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what little psychopaths am I raising? And it's normally not that wild. It's just them killing ants or something. But you understand. It's like, I didn't teach them this. Yeah, that's humanity. The fallen man in them that's reacting like that. And then we like to use this verse. What are you supposed to think? Think about what is good, what is honorable, what is value. Think about the things that are above. You change the thinking. Okay, so this is how you would react. Just kill all the ants. Why would you kill all the ants? Because you have a certain thinking. So he goes on to that. He gives that beautiful part. Then we're landing this plane. In Philippians, he gives us this last two paragraphs where he says in this one, I rejoice greatly. And now he starts with the rejoicing thing. We had this rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. We had this let your reasonableness. Okay, did anyone, when you read Philippians, did anyone get stuck by reasonableness? Who here is a reasonable person? Okay. I'd like to think. I sometimes think that could be a good measure for humility. Is reasonableness. Because we're unreasonable. Like when raising children, I see how unreasonable I am. It's like, don't do that, stop doing this. Don't. Instead of correcting in love and gentleness, I correct in harsh words and firm beliefs. Who would like to be reasonable? Honestly, who would like to be a reasonable person? I think I would like to be a reasonable person. I'm not good at it yet. Luckily, Paul said, not that I yet have obtained it. But I'm not really good at being reasonable. I'd like to be reasonable. And when I'm unreasonable in that situation, do I like myself? No. You know why you are unreasonable? Because you have extremely high standards. Those standards may have been taught to you, and now you impart them to the next generation. Because of those extremely high standards, you measure people by the standards you know yourself you can't reach, but still you measure others by those standards. And Paul gives you some more counseling. Just be more reasonable. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. No longer kill all the Jews. Just be more reasonable. Okay. That's that chiasm. We spoke about it already. It was really interesting. What's your take home? What's your take home? Your doggy bag? What did you read? Do anyone have, is there a question still left in anything? A person's name, a concept you found, a word you read? Oh, lovely. Thank you for, yeah. Okay? Lovely. Okay. Philemon, not in Philemon, it's 2 verse 17. Where is it? 2 verse 17, yeah. Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with you all. Okay. Now, sacrifice means temple language, means you should have Old Testament thinking, first 5 books at least, so you understand what a sacrificial or drink offer is. Now, a drink offer is often a cleansing offer or a devotional offer. So you had this when you said, you know that 3 little pigs, the not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Okay, when you have this honest thing where you say, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin, this is me and this is what I will do, and I make this offering where I pour this out, and I declare I owe it to God to do this, and this is this sacrificial offering. You have it in the Old Testament, you have it where David has these guys that really love him, and they are in this fight against, I think it was the Philistines that took over a little town that was previously theirs. And while they were fighting, the Philistines were in the town and they were guarding the town, and him and his guys, the crazy people, as I like to affectionately call them, and the crazy people, were in this side. And David said to himself, oh, how I long for a Coca-Cola from that specific tuck shop. It's like how I long from the water from that spring in that town. That would be so nice. And these 2 guys just got it into themselves. Come hello high water, we're bringing my Coke from that tuck shop. Understand? That spaza shop's the best spaza shop. The fish and chips. So it's this moment where David just spoke out and said, I'd really like that specific thing. But he knows it's unattainable. That makes it more something you would like. I know it's not possible, but I long for that specific thing. You know, it's when all the shops are closed and your pregnant wife wants a chocolate log, which no longer exists. It's just impossible. So now you're in that impossible situation. And these 2 guys, they just run. They run, they jump over the fences. The army is like, the Philistines are like, what? They're like checking if they're foaming at the mouth because maybe they have rabies and we should make sure they don't bite us. Because all they are looking for is water. So you know, rabies, water, foaming mouth, it's this situation. And the Philistines are really like, this is crazy. And they go, they grab the water, they run back over the lines. It's like the Philistines are like, this is weird. First we have like this kid who kills a giant. Now these 2 people who steal the water. So they're not sure anymore about the mental stability of the Israelis. But you have the situation where they bring it to David, and David understands that the value of this water is so much that I'm not able to drink it. This is an extreme thing. And he'd rather, instead of him having the benefit of his desires being fulfilled, he'd rather sacrifice it to God. Pour it out and say, this type of honor belongs to God. Okay, so now we read that again. I may be poured out, I may be poured out, I may be proud. Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with you all. Now, all of a sudden, if I die today, I'd rather not die for being a prisoner of Rome. I'd rather, this is too much value, my death, the work I've put in, that I offer all up to God. So it's nice. So it's a good question, and it has a bit of context. Corneille made a good observation when saying she did not read too much Jewish things in the book of Philippians. He wasn't making it too much culturally or too much feasts this or sacrifices that. It's a really straightforward book because he's speaking to non-Jews And so he's not making it too difficult. So it's interesting. It's something you pick up. It's not like in Galatians. It's a bit more attainable for us non-Jews. Anyone else? I had a question.
This is well scripture. I'm just curious about it. 2:11, 10 to 11. He explains that, or his statement says that every tongue shall confess that Christ is Lord. Is that regarding towards that the coming back of Christ happens afterwards? Because he says everybody's going to confess that he's Lord.
Okay.
Is he waiting for it?
So that's not a conditional statement for him coming back. Every knee shall bow. That's actually a reference to a psalm. So this is Paul being a Jew and just slipping a psalm in. So this is a psalm, and if you go read it, I don't know if my smart Bible will do that quickly. It goes, therefore, goes... That's the Isaiah reference to verse 10. And he specifically, let's quickly go to verse 10. Every knee shall bow. There's the Isaiah version of it. By myself I have sworn, from my mouth has gone out the righteousness, a word that shall not return. To me every knee shall bow and every tongue shall swear allegiance. Only in the Lord it shall be said of me are righteousness and strength. To him shall come and be ashamed all the incense. So basically it's a reference back to that whole thing. So I would say go and read the whole Isaiah 45 to have a bit more context. But that will bring the weight of that poem just a bit more. So it's not a conditional statement, but it's him reflecting on a previous Isaiah.